The ship came down like a burning star against the purple sky. Captain Lee Taman gripped his command chair as the Baekdu tore through alien clouds. Sparks flew from broken control panels. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. Hull breach. "In Section 7, shouted Engineer Choi Daeho over the noise. "Life support is failing." "Prepare for crash landing," Taman ordered. His voice stayed calm even as his ship died around him. 847 people counted on him. He would not let them down. The ground rushed up fast, purple soil, stretched in all directions. Strange crystal towers jutted from the earth like frozen lightning. 2 red suns hung in the violet sky. This world looked nothing like Earth. The Baekdu hit hard. Metal screamed. The ship skidded across the alien ground for miles before stopping in a deep crater. Smoke rose from the wreckage. Emergency lights flashed red in the darkness. Taman pulled himself from his chair. Blood ran down his forehead. Around him, his crew moved quickly. They had trained for this moment. They knew what to do. "Damage report," he called. "Engines dead," said Daeho. "Navigation systems destroyed. We are not flying again anytime soon. Communications. Gone. We cannot call for help." Taman nodded. They were alone on this strange world. Far from Earth. Far from any help. But they were alive. That was what mattered now. The survivors gathered in the main cargo bay. Families held each other tight. Children cried. Adults looked, scared but tried to stay strong. Dr. Park So-min sat with her 5-year-old son Kim Ji-ho. The boy looked around with wide eyes. He did not seem afraid, just curious. "Listen, everyone," Taman spoke to the crowd. "We are alive. We are together. That is good news. The bad news is we are stuck here until rescue comes. We must work together to survive." Corporal Yoon Min-ho stepped forward. "What are your orders, Captain?" "First, we secure the area, set up a perimeter, check for dangers. Then we salvage what we can from the ship, food, water, medical supplies, anything useful." The work began right away. Teams spread out to explore their new home. The crater was large and deep. The ship sat at the bottom like a metal island. The walls rose high around them. Strange plants grew on the slopes. They had thick purple leaves and gave off a soft glow. Dr. Soman tested the air. "We can breathe it," she told Taman. "But only for short periods. The oxygen is too thin. We need filters for long exposure." "What about the plant life?" "Everything. Looks safe so far. But we should be careful. This ecosystem is completely alien." While adults worked young, Ji-ho wandered near the crater wall. His mother had told him to stay close, but the strange plants called to him. They hummed softly when the wind touched them. Some glowed brighter when he came near. The boy reached out to touch a crystal formation. It was smooth and warm. When his fingers made contact, it rang like a bell. Other crystals nearby began to glow and sing too. It was beautiful. Ji-ho get back. "Here!" his mother called. She sounded worried. The boy ran back to her side. "Mama, the rocks make music!" Dr. Samin looked where her son pointed. The crystal formations still glowed faintly. That was strange. She made a note to study them later. As night fell, the survivors made camp inside the broken ship. It was safer there. The hull would protect them from whatever lived on this world. Emergency power gave them light and heat. Taman stood guard with Min-ho and other volunteers. They watched the crater rim through the darkness. Something moved up there. Big shapes that blocked out stars. The shapes circled the crater but never came down. "What do you think they are?" Min-ho whispered. "I do not know, but they are watching us." The shapes were huge, much bigger than any Earth animal. They moved with purpose, intelligence. They flew without making sound. Their eyes glowed like green fire in the darkness. Dawn came with strange colors. The twin suns painted the sky in shades of red and gold. The mysterious watchers were gone, but Taman knew they would return. Dr. Soman began her studies early. She collected samples of soil and plants. Everything was different here. The very chemistry of life worked in new ways. It would take years to understand this world properly. Jiho followed his mother around the crater. He asked endless questions. Why were the plants purple? Why did the crystals sing? Why did the sky look different? She tried to answer, but many things had no answers yet. "Can we go home, Mama?" the boy asked. Dr. Somin knelt beside her son. She took his small hands in hers. "Our ship is broken, Jiho. We cannot fly it anymore. But maybe someday another ship will come to find us." "Will it take a long time?" "Maybe. We must be patient and brave." The boy nodded. He was not afraid. This place was strange, but it was also wonderful. The singing crystals fascinated him. The glowing plants seemed friendly. Even the big shapes in the sky looked more curious than scary. That night the watchers returned. More of them this time. They circled closer to the crater. Their calls echoed across the alien landscape. Deep voices that spoke in words no human understood. Taman gathered his senior staff. "We need defenses, weapons, barriers. Whatever those things are, they are getting bolder." "Maybe they are just curious," suggested Dr. Soman. "Maybe. But we cannot take that chance. We have children to protect." The captain was right to worry. High above the crater, ancient minds debated the fate of the strangers from the stars. Some wanted to welcome them. Others wanted them gone. The decision would shape both species for generations to come. But none of them knew about the small human boy who could make their crystals sing. 3 weeks had passed since the crash. The human settlement grew stronger each day. Salvaged metal formed new shelters. Solar panels powered basic systems. Water recyclers turned alien moisture into something safe to drink. Captain Taman stood on the observation deck they had built from ship parts. Through his binoculars, he watched the mountain peaks. The watchers were up there. He could see their caves carved into the rock. Perfect geometric shapes that spoke of intelligence and planning. "They are not animals," he told Dr. Soman. "Look at those cave entrances, the symmetry, the purpose. We are dealing with a thinking species." Dr. Soman nodded. She had reached the same conclusion. "The question is, what do they want with us?" High in the peaks, Elder Kethmaran spread his massive wings. His scales caught the light of the twin suns. They shimmered like living metal, bronze and gold and deep green. He was old, even by his people's standards. He had seen 3,000 winters on this world. Behind him, other Vorthak gathered, his council, the wisest of their race. They had debated the soft, sky-fallen creatures for many days now. No agreement had been reached. "They multiply like insects," hissed War Chief Velthara. Her red scales marked her as a warrior born. "Already they spread their metal poison across sacred ground. Soon they will corrupt everything they touch." Scholar Nethvaris shook his great head. His blue scales showed his dedication to learning. "They are builders, makers, like us once were. Should we not study them before we act?" "Study poison and you die from it," Velthara replied. "These creatures fled their own world. They consumed it until nothing remained. Now they come to do the same to ours." Kethmaran listened to both sides. As elder, he would make the final choice. But this decision felt heavy. These creatures from the void were unlike anything in their long history. They were small and soft. Their lives burned bright and brief. Yet they had crossed the darkness between stars. That took courage. "What of their young?" asked Nethvaris. "I have observed them through the far sight crystals. They care for their offspring as we once did." Pain flickered across every Vorthak face. The mention of young always brought sorrow. It had been 3 centuries since any Vorthak egg had hatched. The plague had taken that from them. Now only adults remained, ancient and growing more ancient with each passing year. All the more reason to end this quickly, Velthara said. Why should they have what we cannot? Down in the crater, Corporal Minho led another patrol. His team checked the perimeter sensors. The devices gave early warning if anything large approached the settlement. They triggered often these days. Movement. On the North Ridge, reported Private Park Jasoo. She pointed to where something large had landed between the crystal formations. Minho raised his scope. The creature was magnificent and terrifying. 20 feet tall from nose to tail, wings that could span 60 feet when spread, scales that seemed to glow with inner fire. Intelligence burned in those green eyes. Dragon, whispered Jasoo. The word felt right. These beings looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but those were myths. These were real, and they were watching. The dragon turned its massive head toward the human patrol. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Minho felt something pass between them. Not friendship, not hostility. Something more complex. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. Then the dragon spread its wings and leaped into the sky. It flew with grace impossible for something so large. Within seconds, it disappeared among the peaks. "Report," ordered Captain Taman when the patrol returned. "Confirmed visual contact, sir. The Watchers are definitely dragons. 20 feet long minimum. Intelligent behavior patterns. They seem to be studying us as much as we study them." Young Jiho listened from where he sat with his mother. Dragons. The word made him think of fairy tales. But these were real. He wondered what they thought about, what they wanted, whether they were lonely up in their mountain caves. That afternoon, he wandered to his favorite spot near the singing crystals. The formations grew thicker here. Some were as tall as adults, others small enough for him to hold. They all responded to his touch with music and light. Jiho placed his hands on the largest crystal. It began to glow brighter. The light spread to other crystals nearby. Soon the whole area hummed with soft melody. It was like the crystals were talking to each other. Pictures formed in the crystal light. Jiho saw dragons flying through ancient skies, dragons building great cities in the mountains, dragons caring for smaller dragons that must be their children. The pictures felt like memories, old memories from long ago. Jiho come away from there, his. Mother approached with worry in her voice. She had been calling him, but he had not heard. The crystal music was too beautiful. "Mama, look. The crystals show pictures." Dr. Soman knelt beside her son. She could see the light patterns in the crystal, matrix, but no pictures. Whatever Jiho experienced was beyond her perception. "What kind of pictures?" she asked gently. "Dragons, lots of them. They look happy. But then something bad happens. The little dragons go away. The big dragons become very sad." Dr. Somin felt a chill. Could her son somehow be accessing alien memories? The crystals might be more than simple minerals. They could be storage devices, libraries of living history. "We should tell Captain Taman about this," she said. But before they could move, the crystals flared with brilliant light. Every formation in the crater began to sing at once. The harmony was beautiful and haunting. It spoke of loss and longing and hope that refused to die. High in the peaks, every Vorthak felt the crystal song. It had been generations since the memory. Stones sang so clearly. Something had awakened them, something new. Kethmaron rose from his resting place. His ancient heart beat faster. "Neth Varis, what does this mean?" The scholar had no answer. "The memory crystals have been dormant for centuries. Nothing we have tried could wake them. Yet now they sing." "It comes from the crater," observed Velthara. "From where the sky-fallen ones have made their nest." The three dragons looked at each other. This changed everything. The memory crystals contained their people's entire history, every achievement, every loss, every hope for the future. If the small creatures could somehow access that knowledge. We must know more, Kethmaran decided. Send watchers, but do not reveal ourselves yet. We need to understand what we are dealing with. In the crater, the crystal song faded to silence. Jiho looked disappointed. They stopped singing, Mama? Maybe they will sing again tomorrow, Dr. Soman said, but she made a mental note to study these formations more carefully. Her son had shown her something important, something that might change how they understood this world and its inhabitants. That night, the dragons flew closer than ever before. They circled the crater in perfect formation. Their calls echoed across the alien landscape. To human ears, it sounded like hunting cries. But Jiho heard something else, something sadder. It sounded like singing, like the crystal songs, but with voices instead of light. Songs about empty nests and silent halls, songs about waiting for something that might never come. The boy fell asleep listening to the dragon songs. In his dreams, he saw great cities in the mountains, dragons soaring through crystalline spires, and always the sense of something missing, something lost that could never be replaced, unless it could. 2 months had passed since the Bekdu fell from the stars. The human settlement looked more permanent now. Metal buildings rose from the crater floor. Gardens grew under protective domes. Children played in safe areas while adults worked to build their new home. But tensions were rising. The dragons watched them every day. They flew closer now, sometimes landing on the crater rim to observe the humans below. Captain Taman worried they were planning something. Attack maybe. Or worse. We need better defenses, he told his council. Energy weapons, barriers, something to keep those creatures away from our families. Maybe we should try to communicate with them, suggested Dr. Somin. They are clearly intelligent. Perhaps we can reach some understanding. Engineer Deho shook his head. They are too dangerous. One of those things could destroy our entire settlement. We cannot take risks. While the adults argued, young Jiho explored his favorite area near the crystal formations. The stones still sang for him. They showed him pictures when he touched them. Always the same scenes. Dragons in their ancient glory. Then sadness. Then silence. Today felt different, though. When Jiho placed his hands on the central crystal, it blazed with light. Not the gentle glow he was used to. This was bright as sunlight, warm as summer. The other crystals responded immediately. The entire field became a symphony of light and sound. Pictures formed in the air above the crystals. Not small glimpses, this time. Full scenes that surrounded Jiho like he was really there. He watched dragons soar through cities made of living crystal. He saw them work together to build wonders beyond human imagination. The dragons in the visions looked happy. They had purpose. They had families. Smaller dragons played while adults worked. It was beautiful. Then darkness came to the crystal cities. Jiho watched the dragons grow sick. Their scales lost their shine. Their songs became weak and sad. The small dragons stopped playing. One by one they faded away until none remained. The surviving dragons tried everything to bring back their young. They worked with crystal technology beyond human understanding. They sang songs of power and healing. Nothing worked. The plague had taken their future. All they could do was wait and remember. Jiho, Jiho, where are you? His mother's voice seemed to come from very far away. The crystal visions were so real, so immediate. He felt like he was there among the dragons, sharing their joy and their terrible loss. I am here, Mama, he called back. His voice sounded strange, like an echo. Dr. Somin found her son standing in the middle of the crystal field. Light swirled around him in patterns she had never seen. The formations hummed with harmonic frequencies that made her teeth ache. Whatever was happening, it was far beyond normal crystal resonance. Jiho, you need to step away from there, she said carefully. She did not want to startle him. But Mama, the dragons need help. They are so sad. They had babies once, but the babies all died. Now they are alone. Dr. Soman felt ice in her veins. Jiho, how do you know that? The crystals show me. They remember. Everything. All the dragon history is in here, but only I can see it. Only I can make them sing. The scientist in Dr. Somin was fascinated. The mother in her was terrified. Her 5-year-old son was somehow interfacing with alien technology. Technology that had been dormant for centuries according to what he described. Can you turn it off? She asked. Jiho lifted his hands from the crystal. Immediately the light faded. The music stopped. The visions disappeared. But the knowledge remained. He had seen the dragon's history. He understood their pain. We have to help them, Mama. Help who? The dragons. They are not mean. They are just lonely. They want families again, but they cannot have them. Dr. Somin helped her son out of the crystal field. She needed to report this to Captain Taman immediately. But first, she had to understand what had happened. Jiho, tell me exactly what you saw. The boy described the visions in detail. Dragon civilization at its peak. The plague that killed all their young. Centuries of decline and despair. All stored in crystalline memory banks that responded only to human neural patterns. It was incredible. It was also dangerous. If the dragons learned that humans could access their most sacred memories, they might see it as violation or theft. They might attack to protect their secrets. But there was another possibility. Maybe the dragons already knew. Maybe that was why they watched the human settlement so carefully. Not to plan an attack, but to understand how these small creatures could wake their sleeping memories. High in the mountain peaks, Elder Kethmoran felt the crystal song echo through the stone. The memory crystals blazed with light not seen for 3 centuries. Every Vorthak in the city stopped what they were doing to listen. The memories wake, whispered scholar Nethvaris. Our history lives again. How is this possible? Asked War Chief Velthara. We have tried for generations to reactivate the memory stones. Even our greatest crystal singers failed. Kethmoran spread his wings and leaped from his perch. Come! We must see this with our own eyes. The 3 dragons flew toward the crater. They stayed high enough to avoid human detection, but close enough to observe. Through enhanced vision, they watched the small human offspring standing among the glowing crystals. The child was tiny compared to a Vorthak. His scales were soft pink instead of proper metallic colors. His wings were pathetic arm flaps that could never support flight. Yet somehow this weak creature had accomplished what their mightiest scholars could not. Impossible, breathed Velthara. But they could all see it. The crystals responded to the human child like he was Vorthak royalty. Ancient memories flowed freely for the first time in centuries. Their entire history laid bare to this strange small being. What do we do? Asked Nethvaris Kethmoran. Watch the child's mother lead him away from the crystal field. The human adult could not see the visions. Only the offspring had that gift, or curse, depending on how one viewed it. We wait, the elder decided. And we watch, and we try to understand what manner of creatures we are dealing with. Down in the crater, Dr. Soman reported to Captain Taman. She described what her son had experienced. The visions, the dragon history, the crystal technology that somehow recognized human brain waves. Are you certain about this? Taman asked. I saw the light patterns myself. Something is definitely happening when Jiho touches those formations. Whether his interpretations are accurate remains to be seen. It could be some kind of weapon, suggested Corporal Minho. Maybe the crystals are designed to confuse intruders, make them see false visions. Maybe. But what if it is real? What if we really can access their cultural database? Think what we could learn. Taman considered the possibilities. If the crystals contained technical knowledge, they could use it to repair their ship, maybe even find a way to contact Earth. But if the dragons saw human interaction with their memory banks as theft or violation, it is too dangerous, he decided. Keep Jiho away from those formations. We cannot risk provoking the dragons. But some things cannot be prevented. That night, Jiho dreamed of crystal cities and dragon songs. He felt their loneliness like a weight on his small heart. When he woke, he knew he had to help them somehow, even if the adults did not understand, even if it meant disobeying his mother. The dragons needed someone to remember their lost children, someone to carry their songs forward. Someone small enough to slip through the barriers that separated one species from another, someone exactly like him. 4 months after the crash, the human settlement looked like a small city. Metal towers rose from the crater floor. Solar farms spread across the slopes. Atmospheric processors cleaned the alien air. From space, the colony would look like a shining jewel set in purple stone. But the success came with a price. Resources were running low, critical systems needed repair, and the materials they required could only be found in the mountains. In dragon territory. The quantum resonance coils are failing, Engineer Deho reported to Captain Taman. Without them, our power grid will collapse within 6 months, maybe less. What do you need to fix them? Crystalline matrix compounds. The dragons have entire mountains made of the stuff. But getting to it. Deho shrugged helplessly. Captain Taman studied the survey maps. The nearest crystal formations were 20 kilometers into the peaks, deep in what his scouts reported as heavy dragon activity zones. It would be suicide to send a mining team there. What about alternatives? None that will work. The crystals here in the crater are the wrong type. Too small, too weak. We need the pure matrix formations from the deep caves. Taman closed his eyes. 800 people depended on him. Children looked to him for safety. Adults trusted him to find solutions. But some problems had no good answers. High in the peaks, War Chief Velthara gathered her war riders, 20 of the finest Vorthak warriors, each one larger and stronger than the humans could imagine. Their scales gleamed like polished weapons. Their claws could tear through metal like paper. The corruption spreads, she told them. Every day the sky fallen ones poison more of our sacred ground. Their metal towers stab into living stone. Their machines drink from our crystal streams. They must be stopped. The war riders roared agreement. They had watched the human settlement grow with growing anger. These invaders showed no respect for the world that hosted them. They took what they wanted without asking, like parasites feeding on a dying host. "When do we strike?" asked her Lieutenant Morthak. "Soon. When the moons align and the crystal songs are strongest. We will sweep down from the peaks like the wrath of ancestors. None will survive to contaminate our world." But not all dragons agreed with Velthara's plan. Scholar Nethvaris had spent months observing the humans through far-sight crystals. What he saw complicated the simple narrative of invasion and corruption. They are not destroyers, he argued before the council. They are builders, makers, like we once were in the early days. They fled their own world because they destroyed it, Velthara replied. Now they come to do the same to ours. Perhaps, or perhaps they fled because their world was dying despite their efforts, as ours might be dying despite ours. The words hung in the crystal chamber like poison smoke. No dragon liked to think about their slow extinction, their empty nurseries, their songs that grew weaker each generation. Elder Kethmoran listened to both sides. As always, the decision would fall to him. But this choice felt heavier than most. Once Vorthak blood was spilled, there would be no going back. The humans would become enemies forever. Their strange gift for waking crystal memories would be lost. "What of the child?" he asked. "The one who sings to our memory stones." "A greater reason to act quickly," Velthera said. "Before he learns too much, before he steals more of our sacred knowledge, or before we lose the chance to understand how he does it," Nethvaris countered. The debate continued through the night. Outside, crystal spires caught starlight and sang soft harmonies. Once those songs had celebrated new hatchlings, now they mourned empty nests and fading hope. Down in the crater, Dr. Soman made her own desperate proposal to Captain Taman. She had watched her son grow more distant each day. He spent hours staring at the crystal formations. Sometimes she caught him humming melodies that sounded alien and sad. "Let me try to make contact," she said. "Use Jiho's connection to their crystal network. Maybe we can communicate, negotiate." "Absolutely not. I will not risk a child." "You are risking all our children by doing nothing. In 6 months, our power fails. Our life support fails. Everyone dies. At least this gives us a chance." Corporal Minho spoke up from across the room. "I support Dr. Soman's plan. I have watched those dragons for months. They could have attacked us already if they wanted. Maybe they are waiting for us to make the first move. Or maybe they are planning something worse than a simple attack," Taman replied. "I have seen what those creatures can do. One of them could level this entire settlement." The argument continued, but Taman's mind was made up. He would not risk civilians in some desperate gamble. They would find another way. They had to. But young Jiho had his own ideas about making contact. That night he slipped out of his family's quarters while his mother slept. The settlement was quiet. Most people were in their homes preparing for another day of hard work. The boy made his way to the crystal field by memory. He had walked this path so many times he could do it in darkness. The formations glowed softly in the starlight. They seemed to pulse with inner life. Jiho placed his hands on the central crystal. Immediately, the entire field blazed with light. But this time, he tried something different. Instead of just watching the dragon memories, he tried to send his own thoughts into the crystal network. Images flowed from his mind into the glowing stones. Pictures of his mother reading him stories, his father teaching him to tie his shoes before the crash, human children playing games and laughing together, the love his family shared even in hard times. The crystals carried these images outward, up through the stone of the crater walls, through underground formations that connected the entire mountain range, into the deep caverns where dragons made their homes. High in the peaks, every Vorthak felt the strange new memories flow through. Their crystal network. Human memories, child memories, images of family bonds and innocent joy, things they had not experienced for centuries. Elder Kethamaran jerked awake as alien emotions flooded his mind. Love without condition, wonder at simple things, the fierce, protective instinct that drove parents to sacrifice everything for their offspring. These were dragon emotions, but coming from human sources. "Do you feel it?" Scholar Nethvaris called across the cavern. "The memories. They are not ours, but they are familiar." Even War Chief Velthara could not deny what she experienced. The small sky-fallen creatures felt loss and hope the same way dragons did. They loved their young with the same desperate intensity. They feared the same things: loneliness, extinction, being forgotten. In the crystal field, Jiho felt dragon minds, touch his own, ancient thoughts vast as mountains, memories reaching back thousands of years. And underneath it all, a terrible sadness. The grief of parents who had lost all their children. Tears ran down the boy's face. He had never felt pain so deep, so complete. These magnificent creatures carried wounds that would never heal, all because their babies had died and no new ones could be born. "I am sorry," he whispered to the crystals. "I am sorry you are sad." The response came like thunder through the mountain. Dragon voices raised in harmonies that shook the very stone. Not anger, not threat. Something else entirely. Recognition. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Vorthak had found another species that understood their loss. Another people who loved their children enough to cross the darkness between stars to find them safety. The crystal song faded to silence. Jiho lifted his hands from the formations. He felt drained, but somehow lighter, like he had shared a burden too heavy for one small person to carry alone. Jiho, what are you doing out here? His mother's voice cut through the darkness. She sounded frightened and angry. The boy turned to see Dr. Samin running toward him with Captain Taman and several soldiers behind her. I was talking to the dragons, Mama. You were what? They are not mean. They are just sad. Really, really sad. We should help them. Dr. Soman gathered her son in her arms. She could see the crystal formation still glowing faintly from his touch. Whatever had happened here, it was bigger than a child's imagination. What did you tell them? Captain Taman asked. That we understand. That we know what it feels like to lose people we love. That maybe we can be friends. High above the crater rim, massive shapes stirred in the darkness. Dragon eyes glowed like green stars as they watched the small human family. Tomorrow would bring new decisions, new choices that would shape both species' future. But tonight, the mountains sang with voices that had been silent for centuries. And, for the first time in ages, the songs carried hope instead of sorrow. War was coming, but maybe peace was possible too. 5 months after the crash, dawn came with fire and fury. War Chief Velthara led her war riders down from the peaks like avenging angels. 20 massive dragons dove toward the human settlement, with claws extended and throats full of flame. Captain Taman had prepared as best he could. Defensive barriers ringed the crater. Energy weapons charged to full power. Every able adult stood ready to fight, but he knew the truth. Against dragons this size, human weapons were barely better than toys. All civilians to the shelters, he ordered over the communication system. Military personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. The first dragon struck the outer perimeter like a meteor. Her claws tore through metal barriers like paper. Plasma breath melted defensive turrets to slag. Behind her, the other war riders spread out to attack from multiple angles. Corporal Minho opened fire with the largest energy cannon they had salvaged from the ship. The beam struck Velthara's center mass and did nothing. Her scales absorbed the energy and glowed brighter. She turned toward the weapon emplacement with murder in her eyes. Fall back! Minho shouted to his team. Fall back to secondary positions. But there was nowhere to run. The dragons moved too fast, hit too hard. One by one, the human defensive lines crumbled. Within minutes, the outer settlement was in flames. In the residential section, Dr. Soman grabbed her son and ran toward the emergency shelters. All around them, people screamed and fled. Buildings collapsed under dragon claws, the air filled with smoke and the smell of melted metal. Mama, where are we going? Jiho asked. He did not sound scared, just confused. Somewhere safe, baby. Just hold tight to me. But as they ran, Jiho looked back at the attacking dragons. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw something the adults missed. The dragons were destroying buildings, but avoiding people. Their claws struck metal and stone, but never human flesh. Their fire burned machines, but not families. They are not trying to hurt us, he said. What? The dragons. They are being careful not to hurt people. Dr. Soman looked back despite herself. Her son was right. The massive creatures could have killed dozens of humans already. But every strike aimed at structures. Every flame blast targeted equipment. It was like they wanted to drive the humans away without actually harming them. The realization came too late. A dragon landed directly in their path. War Chief Velthara herself. 20 feet of muscle and scales and barely controlled fury. Her red eyes fixed on the mother and child with predatory focus. Dr. Soman pushed Jiho behind her. Stay back. But the boy stepped forward instead. He walked straight toward the massive dragon. His small hands reached out like he wanted to touch her snout. "I know you," he said in his clear child voice. "You are the sad one, the angry one. You miss your babies." Velthara froze. This tiny creature spoke words that cut deeper than any weapon. How could he know such things? How could he see past her rage to the grief beneath? Around the crater the battle continued, but in this small space between dragon and child time seemed to stop. Other Vorthak noticed their war chief had paused. Other humans saw the strange tableau forming, high above Elder Kethmoran circled on ancient wings. He had come to witness what he believed would be humanity's final hour, but now he watched something impossible. A human offspring approaching, his most dangerous war chief with empty hands and open heart. "You lost them all," Jiho continued. "All the baby dragons. That is why you are so angry. You think we will take this place away too." Velthara's massive head lowered until she was eye level with the child. Her breath came in hot puffs that stirred his hair. One snap of her jaws could end him instantly. Instead, she spoke in the dragon tongue, words that meant, "How do you know?" Jiho could not understand the language, but he felt the meaning through their shared crystal connection. "The memory stones told me. They showed me how much you loved them, how hard you tried to save them." More dragons landed around them. The battle was forgotten as warriors from both sides watched this unprecedented meeting. Never in all their history had a Vorthak allowed such close contact with an alien being. "We are not here to hurt your world," Jiho said. "We just want to live, to be safe, like you want to be safe." Scholar Nethvaris landed nearby. His blue scales marked him as keeper of knowledge. "The child speaks truth," he said in the human language. "I have observed them for months. They build. They do not destroy. They corrupt our sacred places," Velthara replied. But her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "They wake our memory stones," Nethvaris countered. "Something we could not do for centuries. Perhaps there is purpose in their arrival." Captain Taman approached slowly with his hands visible and empty. His uniform was torn. His face was streaked with soot, but his voice stayed calm. "I am Captain Lee Taman, leader of these people. We did not choose to come here. Our ship was damaged. We crashed on your world by accident. Elder Kethmoran descended from the sky like a falling mountain. His bronze and gold scales caught the light of the twin suns. When he folded his wings, the sound was like thunder. Every human and..." Dragon fell silent at his approach. "I am Kethmoran, elder of the Vorthak, speaker for the ancient voices." His words came in accented but clear human speech. "Your offspring wakes our memory stones." "How is this possible?" Dr. Somin found her voice. "We do not know. Jiho has always been sensitive to resonant frequencies. Perhaps his neural patterns match something in your crystal technology. The memory stones have been silent for 3 centuries, since the last of our young died from the plague. Yet this small one makes them sing with old joy and older sorrow." Jiho stepped forward again. His mother tried to hold him back, but he slipped from her grasp. He walked right up to the massive elder dragon, without fear, without hesitation. "You can be happy again," he said simply. "Not the same happy, new happy, different happy." "How?" Kethmoran asked. The question came out like a whisper. "By remembering that love does not end when someone goes away. It just changes, gets bigger, includes more people." The child reached up with both small hands toward the ancient dragon's massive head. For a moment that stretched like eternity, everyone held their breath. Human and dragon alike watched this impossible scene. Then Elder Kethmoran, who had bowed, to no one in 3,000 years, slowly lowered his great head until his snout rested gently in the child's palms. The contact sent shockwaves through both species. Dragons saw human memories of family love. Humans felt the weight of millennia, of loss and hope. Through Jiho's unique gift, the barriers between minds dissolved. In that moment, Velthara understood that these small creatures were not invaders. They were refugees, survivors seeking safety for their own precious young, just like dragons would do if their positions were reversed. Captain Taman felt the Dragon Elder's ancient wisdom, his deep love for his people, his desperate desire to protect what remained of Vorthak civilization. The same drives that motivated human leaders, Dr. Somin, experienced dragon parenthood through crystalline memories, the fierce protective instincts, the willingness to sacrifice everything for offspring, emotions identical to her own despite the vast differences in species. When the connection faded, both sides stood changed. War Chief Velthara folded her wings and settled onto the ground. "I withdraw my warriors," she announced. "These sky-fallen ones are not our enemies." Elder Kethmaran lifted his great head but kept his ancient eyes fixed on young Jiho. "Child of distant stars, you have shown us something we thought lost forever. Hope for the future despite sorrow in the past. Can we be friends now?" Jiho asked with the directness only children possess. The Dragon Elder's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. "Yes, little one, I believe we can be friends." Around them, humans and dragons began to approach each other cautiously. Weapons were lowered, claws retracted. The first tentative steps toward understanding began. But it all started with a child brave enough to reach for a dragon's snout, and a dragon ancient enough to remember what it meant to bow his head in wonder at something small and precious and impossibly full of hope. 1 year had passed since the moment of first contact. The crater looked completely different now. Human buildings stood alongside dragon structures. Metal towers rose next to crystal spires. Two very different technologies working together to create something neither species could achieve alone. Young Jiho walked through the merged settlement with Elder Kethmoran at his side. The massive dragon moved carefully so his footsteps would not shake the smaller human buildings. The boy chatted happily about his lessons and his friends, both human and dragon friends now. "The crystal gardens are growing faster," Jiho reported. "Nethavarus says they like the human fertilizer compounds. They sing louder when they are happy." Kethmaran's rumbling laugh echoed off the crater walls. "You speak of crystals as if they were living things. They are living, just different living. Like how dragons are different living from humans but still living." The elder dragon considered this with the seriousness he gave all of Jiho's observations. In the past year, the child had taught him more about wonder than 3 millennia of existence. Through young eyes, everything became new again. Even ancient crystal formations could be friends instead of mere tools. In the administrative center, Captain Taman met with the Dragon Council. Maps covered the walls showing mining operations and building projects, trade agreements and cultural exchange programs, the work of building a shared civilization. "The quantum resonance coils are working perfectly," reported Engineer Deho. "Dragon crystal technology is centuries ahead of ours. Our power grid will be stable for decades now." War Chief Velthara nodded approvingly. "Your metal working techniques strengthen our crystal formations. Neither of us could build these hybrid structures alone." "What news from the deep space monitors?" Taman asked. Scholar Nethvaris spread his wings in a gesture of satisfaction. "The beacon is working. Any Earth ships in this sector will detect our signal. Your people will know you survived. It had taken months to build the communication array. Human electronics merged with dragon biotechnology to create something that could punch through interstellar distances. Soon Earth would know about the colony, about the dragons, about the alliance that had formed in the crater of a crashed ship. Dr. Soman worked in her laboratory studying Vorthak genetics. The plague that had killed all dragon young was complex, but not impossible to understand. With human medical knowledge and dragon biotechnology, she was making progress. The virus targets specific protein chains in developing eggs, she explained to Kethmaran, but it has weaknesses, gaps in its genetic structure that we might exploit. You believe our young could live again? The elder asked. His voice carried careful hope. I believe it is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. The word hung in the crystal chamber like a prayer. For 3 centuries, the Vorthak had lived without hope of new generations. Now these small, sky-fallen creatures offered what their greatest minds could not achieve, the chance for dragon eggs to hatch again. In the settlement schools, human and dragon children learned together. Well, dragon children in the sense that some young adult Vorthak served as students alongside human kids. They were fascinated by human play behaviors and learning techniques. Jiho taught a class about crystal singing to mixed groups. His unique ability to interface with dragon memory stones made him the perfect translator between species. He could show human children how to touch the formation safely. He could explain to young dragons why humans found music in mathematical patterns. Everyone try together now, he instructed. 12 human children and 3 young adult dragons placed their hands or claws on a small crystal formation. Under Jiho's guidance, they managed to make it glow with soft harmony. The dragons were amazed. How do the small soft ones do this? Asked Morthak. He was Velthara's nephew, barely 2 centuries old by dragon standards. They do not think too hard, Jiho explained. They just feel happy, and the crystals feel happy too. It was a profound lesson disguised as child's play. Dragons had spent centuries trying to reactivate their memory stones through complex mental techniques. Humans managed it through simple emotional connection. Sometimes the most sophisticated problems needed the simplest solutions. As evening fell, the twin suns painted the sky in shades of red and gold. Families gathered for the daily meal, human families and dragon families and mixed groups that had formed their own bonds. Captain. Taman sat with Elder Kethmoran to discuss the day's progress. They had become friends despite their vast differences in size and species. Leadership created its own understanding. The mining operations are ahead of schedule, Taman reported. We should have enough refined crystals to start the next phase of construction. Good. The new workshops will let our artisans work directly with your engineers. Shared knowledge grows stronger than separate knowledge. They ate together in comfortable silence. Dragon food consisted mainly of crystalline formations that provided both nutrition and mineral supplements. Humans had learned to process these into forms their digestive systems could handle. Another small example of adaptation and cooperation. Young, Jiho climbed onto Kethmaran's massive foreleg like it was a favorite chair. The dragon elder had become his unofficial grandfather, his bond father in dragon terms. The relationship had no name in human language, but it felt completely natural. To both of them. Tell me about the old days, Jiho requested. Before the sadness came. Kethmaran's eyes grew distant with memory. The crystal cities sang with young voices then. Hatchlings played games among the spires. Adults worked and planned for futures that stretched beyond the horizon. It sounds wonderful. It was. But this is wonderful too. Different, wonderful. Like you taught me. The boy nodded seriously. When my daddy died, I thought wonderful was gone forever, but then I found new wonderful. With you and Mama and all our friends. The dragon's great heart ached with love for this small creature who had taught him wisdom disguised as innocence. Through Jiho, he had learned that joy did not require forgetting. Sorrow. They could exist together, each making the other more meaningful. Will the Earth ships come soon? Jiho asked. Perhaps. But even if they do, we are home now. This place, these people, dragon and human together. Above them, the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those points of light, Earth circled its yellow sun. Other humans worked and played and dreamed of distant worlds. Soon they would know about this place. About the alliance forged in a crater by a child's courage and a dragon's wisdom. But that was for the future. Tonight there was crystal song and dragon laughter and human children asking for one more story before bed. There were plans to make, and problems to solve, and discoveries waiting around every corner. Most importantly, there was hope. Real hope, built on understanding and shared dreams. The kind of hope that could survive any storm because it was rooted in love rather than fear. High, in the crystal spires, dragon voices sang the evening harmonies. Down in the metal buildings, human families told bedtime stories. And in the space between both species, something new was growing. Something that belonged fully to neither, but embraced both completely. A child had reached for a dragon's snout. A dragon had lowered his head in response. From that simple moment of trust, a civilization was born. One that proved love could cross any barrier, even the vast distance between stars. In his bed that night, Jiho dreamed of crystal cities filled with laughter. Dragon young and human young playing together among living spires that sang with joy. It was a beautiful dream, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like something that could really come true. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. But down in the crater, something entirely new had taken root. Something that would grow and spread, and eventually carry both species to heights neither could reach alone, all because a small boy was brave enough to reach for wonder, and an ancient dragon was wise enough to bow his head and accept the gift of hope renewed.